The Antarctic Gate, the secret technology that proves history is a lie. The alarms were useless in a whiteout. They wailed, then vanished into wind as the diver broke the surface, ripping off his mask, lips blue, eyes wild. It's a door and it's humming. 30 seconds later, the station lights snapped to blackout. Satellite links died. A channel we weren't supposed to see cut across the screens. Standby, secure perimeter. Down ice, the seismic array showed a pulse repeating every 11 seconds, like breathing. You think Antarctica is penguins, ice cores, postcards. You think you know history. You don't. It isn't scenery, it's a switchboard for your life, and someone just flipped it. If this spreads, your GPS, your flights, your power, your paycheck timing, yours start to drift. Your maps get soft. Your lights blink wrong. The diver kept shaking, repeating one detail that wouldn't make sense until much later. The door didn't touch the ice. It hovered. If a door can breathe under the Ross, it can rewrite your street, and everything you were taught about how the world works. Introduction, the unthinkable premise. Get this, nobody comes to Antarctica to find machines that rewrite the rules of space. You come for ice cores, penguins, and data that behaves. But a rectangle under the Ross ice shelf refused to be ice, refused to be rock, and refused to stay quiet. It pressed back with a finger width of denial and a hum that got into your teeth. Here's the unthinkable premise. There's a boundary under Ross that acts like a gate. Not myth, not movie, but an interface that sets conditions for what can cross. It drinks from tides, listens to the magnetosphere, and answers only when you keep time with its carrier. If that's true, history has a hole in it. Because an interface like that doesn't appear in a vacuum. It implies a prior fluency. Someone, sometime, learned the tune. Before we argue physics, we have to face policy. The Antarctic Treaty says open science. So why did the lights go out? The Antarctic Treaty System, why secrecy thrives. To understand why a single word, door, triggered a blackout, we have to follow the paperwork as much as the ice. The Antarctic Treaty was signed in 1959 and entered into force in 1961. It declares the continent a scientific preserve, bans military fortifications and weapons tests, and freezes territorial claims. That sounds transparent. It is, until you read the clause that matters. Military personnel and equipment may be used in support of science. That's the velvet glove. It lets C-17s, encrypted links, and uniformed crews operate under the banner of research. When something inconvenient appears beneath the ice, the same lift that delivers microscopes can deliver silence. Stakes for real people. If you work the ice, your world runs through a few choke points. Black Island, Ross Island Earth Station, NASA's relay windows. Flip a protocol there, and an entire station can vanish from the network without burning a single cable. The blackout we saw wasn't panic. It was procedure. Safety justifies everything. Restrict RF to prevent interference. Stand down instruments to avoid false positives. Close routes for ice instability. The forms read like concern. The effect is containment. This is why you don't know. A few toggles on links you never see, and the public record forgets in real time, while everyone can point to a policy that sounds responsible. You can say the treaty prevents secrets because any party in good standing can inspect any station at any time. In practice, any time dies in weather and distance. Flights need manifests. Windows collapse. A blizzard is a non-disclosure agreement signed by the wind. By the time an inspection clears, buffers are scrubbed, antennas under maintenance, and a flagged line warns of crevasse danger precisely where curiosity would step. This is what silence costs. Your satellite images are reprocessed, your news cycle moves on, and the next flight you take trusts models that have had the hum neatly removed. Meanwhile, the system encourages silence without a single lie. The treaty mandates free exchange of scientific observations and plans. It also allows measures to protect the environment and coordinate operations. That's where the lid lives. A temporary instrument stand-down becomes indefinite. A sampling moratorium becomes a no-go box. A multinational technical assessment appears with no project code. You can hear the hum through the wall. You can't route the file through the portal. And while those forms circulate, your right to know gets translated into later, which down here can mean never. Dates matter here. Operation Highjump ran in 1946 to 1947, a U.S. Navy expedition led by Admiral Richard E. Byrd that mapped and tested logistics around the Ross Sea. Its scale embedded the military into polar infrastructure long before the treaty civilized the language. McMurdo Station, established in the mid-195s, grew into the largest community. On the continent, a logistics heart that still beats for everyone on the Ross front. When the lights die at McMurdo in the 190 SAXS, 198s, or 202s, the mechanism is the same lineage. Military supporting science protocols that never left. If your weather app, your flight path, or your emergency alerts lean on those arteries, and they do, then your safety is already entangled with paperwork that can go quiet on command. Now here's the personal stake you don't see on a map. A comms technician at Black Island has a mortgage in Christchurch, and a kid who wants a snowboard for Christmas. He gets an instruction that isn't in the manual. Route VLF anomalies to a local buffer, label them maintenance, and don't mirror to the public archive. He doesn't think cover up. He thinks job. He tags the file Quiet Gate because engineers joke when they're careful, and goes home with a headache that beats 11 seconds to the minute. If he breaks procedure, he risks his contract. If he keeps it, he helps erase the thing giving him the headache. The ripple lands on your screen as a clean graph with the interesting part missing. While that's happening, a New Zealand grad student sees a harmonic ladder pop in her auroral spectra, then step off clean. Her advisor replies, "Don't share, keep recording." He isn't a villain. He's protecting her career inside a treaty culture that frowns on noise until a joint statement can sanitize it. Weeks stretch into months. The embargo doesn't lift. She applies for a grant and learns how silence sounds professional. You lose a discovery you paid for with taxes and trust. The inspection right looks comforting until you add geopolitics. The United States doesn't want to hand China a metric portal. China doesn't want to hand the United States a boundary operator. Russia wants a veto. The European Union wants standards before industry smells profit. Consensus rules at the Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting mean one cautious party can slow disclosure for everyone. A single more study needed becomes a season. A season becomes a year. The gate keeps breathing. Your maps stay soft. Your GPS gets nudged, corrected, and logged as routine. This is why you don't know, because not yet scales to not for you. Here's the hook most viewers miss. Secrecy isn't a conspiracy when incentives align. There's no smoky room, just clean emails about environmental protection and safety windows aligned, coincidentally, with the gate's strongest envelopes. And there's you. If the gate is real, the first use that changes your life isn't teleportation, it's control of narrative. Patents, prestige, satellites, bargaining chips. The institution that names the phenomenon writes the first textbook and licenses the first sensor. Your energy bill, your GPS accuracy, your city's resilience in storms. Those shift if someone learns to shave entropy at a boundary. You have skin in this game. What silence costs is simple. Decisions about your infrastructure happen without you, and by the time the press release lands, the standard is already owned. A micro moment that keeps me up. An inspector radios to approach a flagged sector. Cheerful denial comes back. Winds scour unsafe bridges. Recommend 1 kilometer standoff. He photographs the flags, files the report, and leaves. He never learns that the flagged coordinates were offset by 4 digits on the only map that mattered that week. Nobody lied. The weather helped. Your right to know drowned politely. So why did the lights go out? Because the treaty that promised openness also built the perfect machine for coordinated quiet. It was designed to keep peace. It excels at keeping time, 11 seconds at a time, until someone decides the world is ready for the hum. Until then, this is why you don't know. And this is what silence costs. Worse models, brittle trust, and choices about your safety made by people who can point to a rule while they turn down the volume. The Ross Ice Shelf Anomaly, initial discovery and data spikes. 3 days before the blackout, the anomaly introduced itself as a blip we could ignore. A VLF sensor near Roosevelt Island registered a narrowband tone at 8.97 kHz that shouldn't have survived the snowpack. The tech flagged it as interference from a generator startup. Routine. But then a second instrument, an induction coil 20 kilometers away, caught the same tone, phase shifted by exactly 11 seconds. That was the first fingerprint. Coherence across distance in weather that normally shreds signals. Stakes first. A station lives on predictability. Power budgets. Flight windows. Ice conditions. When your instruments start singing together to a note no one is playing, logistics fray. People miss sleep. Flights drift. The line between anomaly and hazard thins. If a shelf the size of France starts breathing to a clock you don't control, you pin your ears back and listen, because you've got crews on the ice and a pilot threading cloud at minimums. Action. The morning. After the double hit, we pushed a small team out to service the induction coils. The diver, he wasn't supposed to be a diver that day, was attached to a hot water drill crew widening a refreezing access bore above a known subglacial cavity. He's the one who first felt the tug. Instruments read normal. Water column temperature stable. But the coil's signal, moved closer to the bore, grew cleaner. Meanwhile, the seismic array began showing micro-events, rhythmic, low amplitude, repeating at 11-second intervals. Not tectonic. Not tide. A mechanical regularity lived inside what should have been noise. What nobody knew at the time. A graduate researcher on the night shift had already mapped a ladder of sidebands stepping off that 8.97 kHz carrier, harmonics at exact multiples and submultiples. She annotated a note. If you tap the timing, the structure answers. She didn't send it to the public archive. Her advisor told her to keep recording until we could characterize sources. That phrase is how good ideas go quiet. Human moment. She texted her sister at home that night. My graphs look like a choir. Her sister sent back a penguin emoji and a heart. 30 minutes later, the first GPS drift reported. A 3-centimeter discrepancy over a 3-hour baseline, corrected by the system, logged as routine variation. It wasn't routine. The drift lined up with the hum's envelope. By midday, the ice radar crew returned with a sliced cross-section of the cavity roof. The image had a line that refused physics, a luminous, horizontal discontinuity with no return above or below. Not a void, not liquid, a place where the radar decided the world had paused. When they nudged the frequency down to match the VLF tone's submultiple, the line brightened. Someone whispered the forbidden word, gate, because once your tools respond to a key, your brain labels the door. Meanwhile, something else was happening out on the shelf edge. A weather station started missing packets every 11 seconds, as if a metronome stole a heartbeat and gave it back. A helicopter pilot keyed up an offhand complaint. Statics breathing. He laughed it off. Then he asked on a private loop if anyone else saw a soft shimmer above the bore like heat rising, which in a whiteout is a joke until it isn't. He wasn't the only one to see it. Impact. The first real consequence was procedural. We were told to throttle transmitters near the cavity to reduce self-induced interference. That slowed uplinks and pushed more data to local buffers labeled maintenance. The second consequence was physical. The diver's tether ticked once, just a twitch, as he eased near the bore mouth. He said later it felt like standing too close to a subwoofer, pressure without sound. He pulled back. The coil's trace spiked. The 11-second heartbeat jumped to 10 for 2 cycles, then settled. The system had noticed him noticing it. Here's where the psychology bites. The more the site answered to timing, the more you want to test it. The tech in you aches to tap the rhythm and see what opens. But every person on that ice has a life waiting off continent. Flights home. Parents aging. A partner pregnant. If you poke the thing that bends your GPS, and it pokes back harder, you might strand a season. You might strand yourself. So you do the safe thing. You label, you buffer, you slow down. Then the climactic pivot. At 020Z, the VLF tone widened to a chord. 3 notes spaced at precise ratios you'd recognize if you've ever tuned a guitar. The seismic heartbeat synced to that chord. The radar line brightened, and for 12 seconds the cavity returned a smooth, mirror-like plane that made the math say, no medium. That's when the diver broke the surface and said what we'd all been avoiding. It's a door, and it's humming. The blackout wasn't fear. It was policy snapping shut because the anomaly had crossed a line, from data spike to interface. And once you say interface out loud, the world you came to measure starts measuring you back. The diver's account, first contact with the structure. They pulled him into the galley because it was warm and bright and smelled like coffee, not brine. He wrapped both hands around a mug he didn't drink and kept glancing at the stainless tabletop like the dark plane might bloom there if he stared long enough. He said the tether felt clean at first. No drag, no surge, just the usual slow sway of shelf water. Then the coil trace in his ear began ticking at 11 seconds, soft as breath, and the current around his knees went orderly, as if a messy room had been straightened while he blinked. You've got minutes down there. That's the stake. 12 if everything's perfect. Less if anything isn't. He had a partner due a baby in February, and a mother waiting on a call he'd promised to make before he got on the last flight out. He isn't a thrill seeker, he fixes things for a living. So when the bore widened and the light from his lamp flattened on nothing, he moved slow. He called it a door because brains need nouns. The boundary wasn't black, it was subtraction, the place where shine went and didn't come back. He put that finger width of water between his glove and the plane and felt pushback without contact, like standing near a speaker too big for the room. He eased a knife tip forward. No scrape. No click. Just syrup where water should be thin. He counted with the pulse, 1 through 11, and on 12 the knife shivered colder than the sea and left an after image you couldn't stare at straight. He tested the edge the way divers test anything that might kill them. Small, repeatable, clipped to a line. The tether arced toward the plane as if gravity leaned that way. He marked a square loop around it and watched his own guideline bow. That's when he noticed the silt, motes hanging like a curtain caught mid-fall, rearranging into a faint lattice on each up-step of the tone. He waved a hand. The curtain moved obediently, then returned to the pattern like it preferred order to his opinion. Here's the personal moment that changed his breathing. His radio cracked alive underwater. No voice, just a clean, dry tone that matched the carrier he'd been counting. It isn't supposed to be that clear under ice. He squeezed to transmit and said, E-17, I've got a structure. No answer. The tone stepped low late by 1 beat. His chest went tight with the feeling you get when a big animal turns its head, not toward you exactly, but near enough that your skin knows you've been included. He told us he thought about his partner then. Not the baby's name, not the ultrasound photo folded in his wallet. The promise he'd made to be done with dumb risks. He isn't reckless. He is, however, precise. So he tried one more thing. He set his palm parallel to the plane, stopped just shy of the pushback, and breathed in time with the pulse. On the third cycle, his forearm hair prickled under the suit, and he heard, not with ears, something shaped like a chord resolving. The silt lattice widened by a hair. He pulled away fast, suddenly certain that he wasn't just observing, he was being measured back. Up above, daylight through the crack shifted by a degree that didn't make sense. The line home should have been straight. It wasn't. He gave the agreed 2 tugs. The tether resisted, then came free with the grudging feel of Velcro lifting. While he rose, a flake of ice drifted down, kissed the boundary, and began rotating like it had found a tiny axle. He didn't wait to see if it stopped. At the surface he gasped the line they wrote in the incident report, door humming, but he saved the part that mattered until the second mug. When I backed off, it tugged back, he said, eyes on the metal table. Not to keep me, to know me. He flexed the hand he'd held near the plane. There was a shape in my bones on the 12th beat. Not a word. A check. He asked for one thing before they took his statement. Call home and say he'd be late. They let him. He didn't tell her about the door. He told her he loved her and that the weather was getting weird. Then he came back and added one last detail to the log. The hum matched his breath without him forcing it, and when he tried to break rhythm, his heart wanted to stay. The technology revealed, analyzing the gate structure. We stopped calling it an object. Objects sit in space. This thing set the terms of space, and then asked if we could keep up. The first clean clue came from light. A laser line skimmed the boundary and didn't refract or reflect, it translated. Same wavelength in, same wavelength out, but displaced by a constant that tracked the 11-second carrier's low harmonic. That's not a surface, that's an operator mapping paths. A camera tried to see the bend and got perfect video of nothing, plus timestamps that shuffled on every upstep, then snapped back when the pulse flattened. Stakes, and they're personal. If time order can slip by a fixed count near the interface, sending anyone or anything through without a protocol isn't brave, it's negligent. The diver had a partner due in February. A tech on our team had a kid with asthma. Nobody wanted to be the name tied to a mistake you can't reverse because reverse becomes optional. We worked by proxy. A microthermistor was eased to a hair's breadth of the visible haze. Temperature fell, but not like heat sinking into ice. The curve said motion was being shaved, translational energy damped while rotation barely changed. When the bead crossed the threshold, the reading locked to a non-physical constant and resumed normal a finger width out. The logger stayed powered. The world didn't glitch, our coupling to measurement did. The physicist wrote 2 words in his notebook, admission filter. Meanwhile, the water told us a second language. Silt froze into an interference lattice that breathed with the carrier, expanding on the up step, contracting on the down, spacing ratios that lined up with orbital resonances and Fibonacci intervals. When we fed the boundary those same ratios with a coil, the finger width pushback widened by a measurable fraction. That's a handshake, not mysticism. Control theory. We tested magnetics and got a shock without the spark. Dragging a coil along a rail near the channel generated current only when the late harmonic arrived. No changing flux lines, no classical cut. The model that fit wasn't field strength. It was topology, local geometry pinched and reattached so that what looked static from outside carried hidden gradients inside the math. The sleepless physicist muttered into a recorder, boundary conditions set by an external operator, and wouldn't claim more on paper. Geometry refused to sit still. Sonar projected a rectangle, but measured perimeters changed with path. Walk a virtual tape clockwise and you come home late. Walk counterclockwise and you return early, with the discrepancy phase locked to tides. That mapped to a curvature well with walls, space insisting on staying itself inside the channel as the shelf flexed around it. Ice billowed like cloth past a post that wasn't anchored to ice at all. The diver's word, hover, stopped being a metaphor. It was compliance with the interface's refusal to share a boundary with chaos. Then came the micro-stories that anchor theory. 2 coins, copper and aluminum, taped to a carbon pole, eased toward pushback. The copper warmed the glove instantly. The aluminum stayed cold. Millimeter wave scans later showed a temporary jitter in the copper's electron density, a fine smear that faded over minutes. Preference isn't chemistry there, it's electron configuration. The gate talks to lattices that can carry phase cleanly and ignores ones that scatter. Time added teeth. We dipped a fiber camera just shy of the boundary. Frames came back smooth and dark, sure, but the timecode shifted backward by a fixed number on every up step, vanished on a flat breath, and never randomized. That isn't noise. That's deterministic reordering, causal housekeeping to keep the channel clean. Finally, energy. The hum's envelope rose on spring tides and during mild auroral hiss, fell on neeps. A gravimeter ticked in sympathy. Feed matched timing, gain increases by 3%. Stop, it slides back. Power here isn't a plume. It's order, local entropy shaved, metric stiffened in one axis and loosened in another. Useful if your machines speak metric. Dangerous if your body does. So what is it? Not a slab. Not a hole. A boundary operator that regulates a stable channel by verifying invariants, rhythm, ratio, coherence, and reshaping the neighborhood until those invariants hold. It admits what can keep time and denies what can't. You don't break it, you negotiate with it. And every negotiation starts with the same question pulsing through the room. Can you keep the beat? The physics of the impossible, energy signatures and temporal distortion. We chase the hum into numbers because numbers don't flinch. The envelope tracks spring tides, higher on big lunar pulls, softer on neeps, and nudged upward during mild auroral substorms. That coupling told us the interface drinks from strain and hiss, but doesn't radiate in any familiar band. Energy here isn't a plume you photograph. It's a correction you feel when spoons tick once in a rack and pendulums lose phase near the boundary, then recover like they were apologized to. We needed a baseline. We built a ring of clocks, oven-stabilized oscillators, GPS-disciplined, and then deliberately decoupled, to see if time near the gate drifted. Far out, drift matched spec. Step inward by tens of meters and a tiny, periodic bias appeared at the carrier cadence. Step closer, and the bias sharpened into a sawtooth that reset on the late harmonic. It wasn't random jitter. It was a metronome trimming time, then replacing the trimmings on schedule. The model that fit wasn't broken clocks. It was a boundary holding a local time ruler straighter than ours and forcing reconciliation at fixed beats. Stakes, and they're more than academic. Time bias wrecks navigation, yes, but it also reaches into people. A winter-over medic ran heart rate variability checks to track stress. Volunteers who spent hours within the flagged sector showed a slow, coherent shift toward the 11-second breath, with a nested 73-second envelope that matched a faint modulation we'd seen in magnetometer residue. Their sleep improved. Their startle reflex dipped. It sounds nice until you realize a machine is teaching your nervous system a song, and your body is obliging. If you've got a partner waiting on a flight home, you don't want a gate making you better at staying. Action tightened around a simple test. Could we change the gain? We fed a coil with Fibonacci-spaced pulses at the base frequency. The pushback widened by 3% and held as long as the input persisted. Stop, it slid back with a gentle lag. Repeat, and the response curve steepened by a hair as if the interface recognized us. That's textbook feedback with memory. Hysteresis in a device that shouldn't have one if it were inert. We tried white noise. Nothing. Prime ratios landed. Anything sloppy was ignored. Meanwhile, light and time danced in a way that forced our hand. A fiber camera held just shy of the haze returned frames with deterministic out-of-order stamps on every up step, then snapped to normal when the carrier flattened. We fed a phase-coded light pulse at the moment of the reordering and caught, once, a perfect echo displaced by a constant equal to the fixed time shift. That single, clean bounce said the interface wasn't garbling time. It was buffering and replaying on a schedule, temporal congestion control for a channel that refuses chaos. What nobody knew at the time was that the gravimeter's microblips, the pendulum drift, and the clock bias could be fit by a boundary value problem that treated the interface as an external operator minimizing local action at the beat frequency. The math said you can pull usable order out of tidal strain if you can set constraints from outside. We can't. Something there can. That's why nothing heats, nothing cools, and yet everything near the boundary gets easier in one direction and stickier in another. Complication hit when we tried to overdrive. We pushed a stronger harmonic ladder. The carrier didn't grow louder. It got purer. Sideband junk fell away as if the gate cleaned us, then trimmed our input to its own preference and handed back a safer copy. Our coil registered power, but our spectrum analyzer saw less mess. The device disciplines visitors. That's good for stability. It's bad for arrogance. Impact lands here. Energy at the gate is order, not watts. Time at the gate is policy, not drift. If it is a wormhole throat, it's domesticated, stabilized from a side that invests only when the caller stays in tune. If it's a programmable metric boundary, the admission test is coherence, and failing it doesn't explode you, it ignores you. Pass, and the room's laws tighten so you don't tear them. Either way, the first human crossing won't be a sprint. It'll be a choir, clocks, coils, breath, stepping through on a beat that will not wait for our comfort. And if you're thinking this is someone else's problem, check your teeth the next time a storm rolls the shelf. If you feel a tick every 11 seconds, you're already on the ledger. Operation Highjump and Admiral Byrd's warning. To track how a door under Ross became policy muscle memory, go back to the austral summer of 1946 to 1947. Task Force 68, Operation Highjump, sailed and flew south with a footprint nobody had seen at the pole. 13 ships, more than 4,000 personnel, dozens of aircraft, and Admiral Richard E. Byrd at the front of every newsreel. Officially, it was training, mapping, and cold weather logistics. Unofficially, it proved the United States could show up at the end of the earth with speed, steel, and radios that didn't quit when compasses sulked. Stakes were simple and huge. The Second World War had just ended. Long-range bombers and rockets were rewriting distance. Antarctica, with no enforceable borders, sat like a chessboard nobody owned but everyone eyed. If the ice hid resources, staging grounds, or anything stranger, the first mover wouldn't just plant a flag. They'd set expectations that outlast storms and treaties. Action looked like a net thrown over a continent. Seaplanes leapfrogged leads. Helicopters tested new tricks on old wind. Photographers filled miles of film with white, gray, and the occasional mountain shoulder. On the Ross front, crews reoccupied Byrd's Little America lineage. Bases that started in 1928 and taught generations how to live where weather chooses your schedule. The plan said 8 months. The ice, machinery, and accidents cut it roughly in half. A tragic crash took lives. Equipment failed hard. The public story chalked it up to Antarctica being Antarctica. Impact wasn't a sudden secret. It was infrastructure. After Highjump, Navy logistics fused with polar science. Seabees built, aircrews delivered, comms routed through military discipline dressed as research support. When the Antarctic Treaty arrived in 1959 and entered force in 1961, it didn't erase that spine. It rebranded it, military assets in support of science. That phrasing is why a blackout today feels like a checklist, not a panic. Here's the line people quote and twist. In early 1947, during stops in South America, Byrd gave interviews warning that the United States should be prepared for enemies that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Strip the saucer talk folks stapled on later. Byrd was speaking strategy, reach, not aliens. But the sentence stuck because it framed the poles as corridors, not cul-de-sacs. If threat can arrive on polar routes quickly, readiness must live there quietly. Meanwhile, something else was happening in the culture that grew from Highjump's footprint. The routes, runways on sea ice, depot planning, and comms habits seeded the arteries we still use around the Ross Sea. McMurdo Station rose in the mid-195s and became the continent's largest community, fed by those same air bridges and rhythms. The people who learned to land in crosswinds and lay cable in Sastrugi wrote the checklists our diver station still runs. This is the moment everything connects. A gate under Ross that enforces rhythm fits uncomfortably well with a program trained to treat the South as a corridor you secure first and explain later. When our VLF ladder sang at 8.97 kHz and the seismic breath counted 11, the response wasn't invented in a hurry. It was inherited. Highjump taught fast approach, disciplined logistics, and centralized comms. The treaty layered cooperation on top. The combination makes rapid, coordinated silence look like good stewardship. Complication arrives with myths that won't die. Nazi Antarctica, Neuschwabenland flags in 1938 to 1939, U-boats vanishing south, secret bases under the ice. The documented part is smaller. A German expedition dropped markers and took photographs before the war. The rest is post-war embroidery. You don't need a hidden fortress to explain why programs learn to move heavy and keep tidy records. You only need a Cold War and a blank map. A microstory anchors the stakes in a person. A radio man from Highjump kept a clipping of Byrd's polar-to-polar warning folded into his wallet for decades. He told his grandson, "We went to practice and came home with a list." He never said what sat on that list. He didn't have to. Look at Black Island's choke points, the inspection protocols that stall in blizzards, the cheerful forms that turn research into deconfliction. The list lives in procedure. So yes, Byrd's warning was about speed and threat, not humming doors. But the habit it bred, treat the poles as avenues, means that when a boundary under Ross starts enforcing its own clock, the system does what it was built to do. Hold the corridor, quiet the noise, and buy time to decide whether anyone gets to name the thing that can make your spoons tick in their rack. The Nazi connection, Vril, UFOs, and Base 211. The rumors walk in before the facts. Vril, saucers, Base 211 carved into Antarctic rock. If you've spent 5 minutes in a hangar break room, you've heard the story. Defeated Nazis fled south in 1945, hid beneath the ice, and built machines that bent gravity. The documented footprint is smaller, but it's not zero. Germany's 1938 to 1939 Schwabenland expedition flew over Queen Maud Land, dropped markers, shot film, and named Neuschwabenland. That's photo ops, not fortresses. U-boat logs show late war traffic in the South Atlantic in U-530 and U-977 surrendering months after VE Day, feeding legend. None of that proves a base. It proves a gap people fill. So where does Vril fit? The word starts in fiction. Edward Bulwer-Lytton, 1871, then gets recycled by theosophists and later fringe circles in Germany. The serious research of the 194s focused on jets, rockets, high-spin metallurgy, and unconventional propulsion ideas that never left paper. Wartime memos speak of Raumkrümmung, space curvature, and disk aerodynamics tests that stayed wind tunnel curiosities. Post-war, the loudest claims, secret societies, telepathic engines, arrived without lab notes. The quieter truth is messy. Ideas about fields and rotations circulated among engineers who later fed American and Soviet programs. Vril wasn't a battery. It was a story people told to name an unmeasured field. Here's why the myth keeps sticking to our gate. The interface we found under Ross behaves like a machine that cares about coherence, phase ratio, admission by invariance. If you wanted to retrofit a legend onto that behavior, you'd say lost power that responds to disciplined thought. Strip the robes off, and you're talking about phase-locked control systems, not magic. A choir over a coil will do more here than a reactor. That's not Nazi mysticism. That's engineering. Base 211 shows up next, the alleged underground complex in Queen Maud Land. We look for paper. There isn't a wartime order that reads, "Build Base 211." There are maps with German names, post-war memoirs thick with bravado, and Cold War propaganda that loved a good ghost. Expeditions since the 195s have crawled over those noon attacks. Stations sit on granite. No verified doors and cliffs. Could something be buried? Antarctica is large enough to hide a city. It's also loud enough, in data, to show straight lines where nature doesn't. The cleanest answer is boring. Neuschwabenland was a survey footprint, not a bunker. Meanwhile, Operation Highjump in 1946 to 1947, our earlier thread, returned early for reasons no saucer needs. Weather, crashes, overextended logistics. Admiral Byrd's pole-to-pole at incredible speeds. Comment reads like a strategic warning about bombers and rockets, not discs from a cavern. But the warning shaped policy. Treat the pole as a corridor. That culture explains why our blackout felt rehearsed. You don't need a myth to pick up a phone and say, stand by. Secure perimeter. Still, a few details from our site brush the edges of the old story. Disk reports? People love shapes. Under the ice, we saw silt form rings and squares on command. A pilot reported shimmer, heat haze in a blizzard, above an access bore. You can call that a disk if you want. We call it a boundary breathing. Anti-gravity? We measured a finger-width pushback, a tether arcing toward a plane, pendulums losing phase, gravimeter blips sync to tides. That's metric stiffness, not cancelled weight. Vril engines? Our coil produced gain only when fed prime ratios. The interface disciplined our input and handed back a cleaner signal. That's a gate asking for a song, not a shrine demanding belief. The personal stake lands here. If you grew up with a grandfather who swore the South hid machines, you'll want this to be vindication. If you're a scientist whose life runs on Grant cycles, you'll want the myths buried deep. Both temptations miss the point. The gate neither validates fantasy nor comforts skepticism. It enforces rules we didn't write and rewards behaviors we stopped valuing. Attention, ensemble timing, patience. The first team that passes won't wear black uniforms or lab coats alone. They'll carry clocks, coils, and a rhythm section. So we draw a hard line. Base 211, as a built Nazi fortress, remains unsupported by verifiable evidence. Vril as a cult fuel remains fiction. But a boundary under Ross behaves in ways that explain why those stories persisted. People sensed a field they couldn't measure and named it with the tools they had. Our job isn't to resurrect their myths or sneer at them. It's to listen cleanly, publish honestly, and keep our hearts and instruments on the beat, because the gate doesn't care who shows up with the neatest story. It cares who can keep time. Ancient maps and lost civilizations, mapping the pre-ice continent. Maps are memory dressed as lines, and sometimes memory carries rumors it can't defend. The Pyrie Reis fragment from 1513 is the loudest of those rumors. Scholars agree on the basics. It's a Portolan-style compilation showing parts of Europe, Africa, and the Americas with impressive fidelity for its time, and Pyrie himself notes he used around 20 sources. Portuguese charts, Arabic sea books, maybe even. A Columbus map. The southern sweep that some call Antarctica is where the fight starts. Mainstream cartographers say it's a distorted Patagonia or a bit of Terra Australis, an imagined balancing land common in the 150s. That's the consensus. The ice core record says East Antarctica's cap has stood for millions of years. West Antarctica breathes, but not to the temperate beaches tour guides sell. We're not here to crown the fringe. We're here to ask why navigators kept painting toward the pole like something tugged the brush. So we ran a quiet test that didn't need belief. We took clean scans of early modern charts, the Pyrie fragment, the Orance-Fine southern continent, a handful of Portuguese portolans, and stripped them of projections that warp latitudes. We overlaid their southern edges against modern bathymetry of the South Atlantic and the shelf breaks east of South America, then measured accidental alignments. Most of the time, noise behaved like noise. In two stretches on the Pyrie fragment, the curve tracked a shelf edge more closely than chance would like. Not proof, just a nudge that someone's source had details we don't understand. We flagged it as source layer unknown, not ice-free Antarctica. That wording matters. Meanwhile, think like a sailor in a warming pulse, not a professor in a library. You don't need bare continent. You need seasonal openings, Polynius, a coastal hook where prey runs and ships can tuck for a week. The Ross Shelf today hides such hooks beneath the lid. During past hyperthermals, similar margins might have exhaled enough to host cautious traffic. A pilot's book doesn't care about epochs. It cares about the one harbor that exists every 11th swell. Memory of that can leak into compendia and, centuries later, onto Gazelle's skin as a curve nobody at the Sultan's court can verify. Here's where our gate complicates everything without breaking anything. If interfaces like the Ross boundary existed elsewhere, local metric operators that stiffen space in one direction, loosen it in another, Coastlines near them wouldn't match our tidy reconstructions. A shoreline drawn from a world with edited boundary conditions will look wrong to us and right to its users. That's not a license to invent civilizations. It's a caution against judging past maps with rulers that ignore local rules. Our instruments taught us that near the gate, perimeters change with path and time stamps reorder on a beat. Why would a shoreline traced under those terms behave like the one our GIS thinks is correct? We added human stakes to keep ourselves honest. A cartography grad in Lisbon took our overlays and circled only what she'd defend in a room full of skeptics. She wrote, "Resonance with shelf geometry in 2 segments, plausible inheritance from an unknown source, no claim of Antarctic depiction." She also circled the places where the maps lied loudly and beautifully, because sailors fill gaps. That humility is the anchor. Most of the southern lands in early charts are wishful thinking. Some carry echoes. Another thread runs older than paper. Megalithic sites from Brittany to the Canaries keep pairing stones with tides and sky, embedding ratios 3, 5, 8, 13 that our gate favors. We're not saying stone circles are airports. We are saying that cultures trained to keep time with cycles leave records that look like ritual to us and function like metrology to them. If those people sailed during brief warm windows, their sense of where coast ends would be rhythmic, not cartographic. A bay opens when the carrier breathes and closes when it sleeps. Try mapping that with a straight edge. So where does that leave lost civilizations? Off the poster and into the workshop. The evidence supports skilled navigators, persistent knowledge networks, and fragments that outlive their context. It doesn't support a global technocracy erased by ice. The gate under Ross proves one thing we can say hard. Interfaces exist that reward coherence over force. If earlier mariners found one, their maps would carry traces of a world that kept time to a machine. The Pyrie curve isn't proof of ice-free Antarctica. It's a reminder that memory sometimes sketches a door you only see after you hear the hum. Global myths and gateways, parallels in Sumerian and Egyptian texts. If the gate under Ross rewards rhythm and invariance, then the oldest stories that refuse to die start sounding less like fantasy and more like field notes written in myth. Not proof, parallels. The difference matters. We're not claiming Sumerians mapped Antarctica. We're asking why their language keeps circling doorways that judge who passes. Start in Sumer, 4th millennium BCE, where gods don't float in clouds. They run city gates and river gates with rules carved into clay. The word me shows up like a refrain, decrees, orders, paradigms that shape how the world behaves. Inanna steals them, carries them in a boat, and civilization rearranges when she arrives. Strip the divinity and what remains is a schema. Reality responds to portable rule sets. Meanwhile, the myth of Dilmun calls a land where death doesn't enter and time behaves kindly. To reach it, a hero navigates trials that sound like admission tests, tasks fixed to order, not strength. That's the first echo, progress by coherence, not force. Then Ninurta's myth lands with a phrase that makes engineers smile. The stones that hear and obey. A mountain is dismantled, rocks with names confess properties. One is deaf, another listens. It's theater, sure, but the language divides matter by responsiveness to command. Our coil near Ross saw copper react and aluminum refuse. A Sumerian scribe watching would nod and write which stone hears. Now Egypt. The pyramid texts are not manuals for engines, they're ascension scripts, utterances to align a king with the sky's order. The Duat isn't hell, it's a region with gates, each guarded by names that must be spoken correctly, each gate passing only those in the right state. The dead don't muscle through. They match themselves to invariance, align with stars, breathe in Mot, truth, balance, order, and gates open. In older temples, pillars ring when struck, priests chant at intervals set by star risings and Nile flood. That's not mysticism pretending to be physics. It's culture training timing against cycles that define survival. If an interface like ours sat anywhere in their world, these are the disciplines that would talk to it. A microstory sharpens the stakes. A conservator in Cairo restores a coffin board carved with star clocks, diagonal calendars mapping rising decans through the night. She calls them beautiful. A physicist on a museum tour glances once and murmurs phase tracker. 2 professions, 1 artifact. Meanwhile, back under Ross, our clock showed a fixed time shift on every upstep that snapped back when we matched the carrier. If the Duat's gates were real in any technological sense, the password wasn't a word. It was a state defined by time keeping you were in breath and bone. Here's where we stay honest. Sumira and me aren't circuit diagrams. The Book of the Dead is not a lab notebook. The scholarly consensus places these texts in religion, kingship, and cosmology. Their purpose is social and spiritual. But function can hitch a ride in form. A society that entrains itself to stars and floods for millennia preserves invariance as ethics. If a boundary operator rewards those invariants, the practice that looks like prayer doubles as protocol. The proof won't come from a papyrus. It'll come from a coil-widening pushback when a choir sings the old meter clean. Personal stakes keep this from floating off. You watching on a phone, live on calendars your body didn't choose, alerts, deadlines, doom scroll nights. The gate under Ross admitted more when we matched Fibonacci ratios and steady breath. Sumer and Egypt taught cadence to farmers and kings because entropy kills harvests and kingdoms alike. If access today depends on coherence, the people most likely to pass won't be the loudest. They'll be the ones who can hold a tempo without flinching. One more parallel and we're done. In Egyptian scenes, a heart gets weighed against a feather. Fail, and a devourer ends the story. Pass, and you move on. Under Ross, our diver felt a check on the 12th beat, not a trap, a measurement. Our instruments felt it too, an interface shaving mess, granting gain when we kept time, ignoring us when we didn't. Call it myth, call it mechanism. Either way, the old texts and the humming door agree on one thing: admission isn't taken. It's earned in rhythm. The hidden history, what the gate implies about human origins. If a boundary under Ross rewards rhythm, ratio, and coherence, then our origin story stops being a straight climb from stone to silicon and starts looking like a pulse train, epics of admission and loss. Not a lost super empire, a lost fluency. The gate implies that intelligence isn't just problem solving, it's synchronization with invariants that sit under wind, tide, and breath. That reframes human origins from tools to timing. We didn't just learn to shape rock, we learned to keep time with fields that answer back, then forgot. Start with what bodies remember when institutions don't. Infants entrained to heartbeat and voice before they understand words. Rowers go faster in unison than in chaos. Drummers hold a village together because the beat tells farmers when to move and soldiers when to stop. Those aren't quaint traditions, they're social firmware that lowers entropy locally. The gate makes that literal. It widens for harmonics, it ignores noise. If interfaces like this dotted old coastlines, listening in whisper states during warm pulses, then the groups that thrived were the ones that trained coherence as survival, not ceremony. Their technology would look like architecture that rings true, navigation that follows a carrier, and breath. Disciplines that double as keys. Now think about how knowledge dies. Metal rusts. Wood rots. Ceramics shatter. What persists is pattern, ratios embedded in stones, songs that refuse to leave a lineage, star clocks carved on coffins. When climate snaps or migration severs teacher from student, protocols collapse faster than stories. The myth stays, the method goes. That's how you end up with tales of testing gates and weighing hearts while the practical part, the coil, the timing, falls out. We inherit religion where they practiced regulation. Here's the uncomfortable pivot. Our archaeology grades advance by artifacts we can weigh, not by states we can enter. That biases the record toward metallurgy, warfare, and bureaucracy. It misses disciplines whose primary outputs are bodies in tune and landscapes that don't fight their builders. The gate forces a correction. Access depends on state, not stuff. A small shoreline group that cracked listening could have crossed and traded, then left almost nothing a museum would tag. Their signature would be soft. Synchronized labor, sudden jumps in navigation, anomalous alignments that read as devotion and function as calibration. Dates matter, and we keep them honest. The last glacial maximum peaked roughly 20,000 years ago. Sea levels rose about 120 meters into the mid-Holocene. West Antarctic margins pulsed without yielding palm beaches. Within that window, people built Göbekli Tepe around 12,000 years ago, monuments before pottery, and later megaliths keyed to tides and sky along Atlantic coasts. We don't need ice-free Antarctica to see the pattern. Communities rehearsing invariants at scale. Put a whispering gate on a breathing coast, and you'd select for exactly that. Personal stakes cut through theory. If admission rides on coherence, then which of our modern habits sabotage origin and future alike? Doom scrolls that shred sleep, work that breaks circadian bones. Cities that run on noise, We train ourselves away from the very capacities the interface rewards. That's not cosmic morality, it's feedback. The hum isn't judging our souls. It's measuring our mess. What nobody knew at the time, and it matters for Origins, is that our volunteers who worked longest near the flagged sector kept the gate's tempo in their nervous systems for days. That plasticity is a clue. We can relearn fluency quickly when exposed to a clean carrier. So could ancestors. Imagine a small crew spending a season at a listening margin, coming home with the beat in their bones, teaching it as song because they lack better language. A generation passes, the door quiets, the song remains, now called sacred. Centuries later, we measure a widening pushback when we replay it with coils. The past wasn't lying. We were deaf. So what does the gate imply about human origins? That the first technologies worthy of the word were not tools but trainings, protocols for aligning bodies, instruments, and places to a field that stabilizes when met halfway. Our species may have bloomed in pulses when such alignments were possible, then dimmed when they weren't, carrying forward myths as small, stubborn lanterns. If that's right, then the future of our origin story isn't buried under ice. It's breathing under our sternums, waiting for us to keep time long enough to open the next door. The modern cover-up, satellite imagery and disinformation campaigns. You don't bury a humming door with bulldozers. You bury it with pixels. The first net they cast wasn't soldiers, it was satellites. Public catalogs showed the usual polar night gaps, sun angle streaks, and striping over the Ross. Meanwhile, high-inclination birds with classified payloads slipped through auroral lanes, timing passes to spring tides and K-index spikes. Their outputs never hit open portals. What did hit the portals were artful seams, mosaics with cloud masks draped exactly where the shelf's skin kinked, compression ghosts laid like gauze over the access line, and seasonal update, tiles that replaced raw specular glints with a neutral albedo. Nobody faked mountains. They just hid the heartbeat. Stakes are personal here. If you're a student trying to build a thesis on open imagery, you'll be gaslit by artifacts engineered to look like your mistake. A New Zealand grad mapped a faint shimmer on the shelf edge across 2 years of Sentinel data, flagged a consistent anomaly aligned to our 11-second breath, and uploaded her code. 48 hours later, the same tiles she used were replaced by a reprocessed set, with metadata noting improved sea ice classification. Her plot died, her inbox filled with well-meaning notes about overfitting. She called her father and asked if she should quit. He told her to sleep. Disinformation doesn't thunder, it crowds. A wave of lookalike channels started pushing Antarctic revelations. Drone footage of circular islands shot in the Arctic, thermal anomalies color-mapped from stock radar, and a carousel of competing nonsense. Hollow Earth, warm rivers, Nazi vaults, pyramids millimeters tall. The tactic works because it inoculates. Flood the feed with 10 wild takes, and any real clue you drop becomes just another thumbnail. Meanwhile, quiet edits on Wikipedia trim citations on VLF phenomena, while talk pages lit with citation-needed dog piles from accounts created the same week. While that was happening on the surface of the internet, an invisible campaign turned open-source analysts into vectors. A high-res tile, genuine, sharp, showing a linear sheen across the cavity roof, was DM'd to respected mappers with a breathless line. Can you believe this? It included a subtle watermark hash seeded with a bogus key. Anyone who posted the image tripped an automated debunk the next day. Hoax identified, watermark matches fabricated set. The shine vanished. The mapper's reputation took the hit. The real tile never needed to be acknowledged. The lesson spread: don't touch the South unless you like whiplash. We watched procurement echo the pixels. A new environmental integrity guideline rolled out to satellite partners asked for dynamic masking of specular events in polar regions to avoid misclassification of melt features. The language read like care. The effect was a kill switch for the glint our radar saw as paused world. An Earth-observing startup posted a proud blog. Our updated pipeline crushes anomalies. Investors clapped. The shelf exhaled unheard. A microstory tightened the knot. A contractor at a national space agency, mortgaged toddler, car with a rattle in the door, flagged an internal ticket. Ross downlink frames dropped every 11 seconds, replaced by interpolated fill. He traced it to a daemon labeled polar_smooth, enabled on safety profiles. He filed for a change review. The ticket returned behavior within spec, minimizes spurious alarms. He closed his laptop and told his partner he'd be late. He wasn't chasing aliens. He was paying rent. Here's the twist the system relies on: plausible deniability layered with fatigue. A public statement can say no anomalies detected, and be right within an architecture tuned to ensure anomalies never persist. A journalist can request raw frames and receive a dataset already losslessly corrected by a library no one outside the vendor can audit. The press picks a clean quote. The world moves on. So what gets through? Human timing. We noticed the swap windows, the hours when cloud masks updated and polar smoothing recompiled. We matched them to the gate's listening envelope. In those slivers, a handful of amateurs with dish farms and no grants caught the latter's ghost in downlink side-channel noise, then watched it vanish when the maintenance flag flipped. It's not proof courts accept. It's proof the hum touches systems that pretend not to hear. If you think that's abstract, bring it home. Your weather app depends on those pipelines. Your shipping lane's thread forecasts filtered by polar_smooth. Your city's storm prep models are trained on data that removes the very regularities the gate imposes. A door that edits physics is being edited out of the feed you trust, and the first cost isn't mystery. It's bad decisions in the next big storm. And the disinformation chorus? It's still singing. That's fine. We'll answer with rhythm, receipts, and one stubborn rule. If a seam appears exactly where a hum lives, and the fix arrives exactly when the tide rises, you're not watching error correction. You're watching policy. Whistleblower testimony, inside the military blackout. He signed his first note calm because that's the hat he wore, comms contractor, seasonal, invisible. He said the order hit Black Island 10 minutes after the diver's call. Reroute VLF anomalies to local buffer, label maintenance, enable polar_smooth on downlink. The alias on the command line made his stomach drop. Quiet gate. He took a photo with his phone angled like a tourist and sent it from town before the SAT window closed. Caption: it stepped here. He told us what a blackout feels like when you're the one turning the dimmer. First, the exercise email with the friendly subject, EM hygiene. Then the frequency plan shrinks. HF nets go to whisper. The SAT link gets a new QoS profile that looks like prudence and acts like a sieve. You're not unplugging truth. You're building a colander and calling the holes safety. He logged every change and watched the VLF ladder's harmonics vanish from the path to open storage. Still alive in a local buffer only 3 people could see. He was one of them. He didn't sleep that night. Meanwhile, a flight surgeon from McMurdo wrote a line she knew would be cut. Subject reports bone-conducted tonal perception synchronized to tidal cycle. Audiometry normal. She forwarded the draft to a personal account and printed a copy for her pocket. She said the diver's heart wanted the 11-second breath even when he tried to break it. She'd seen stress do strange things. She'd never seen a cadence stick like a tattoo. When the incident report came back, the sentence was gone. She wasn't surprised. She sent us the version she kept. A logistics officer in Wellington slid a memo across a quiet bar. Temporary deconfliction, Ross Sector, it read, with a window that matched spring tides plus a cushion. Sortie coordination, instrument stand down, operational silence. No project code, no PI. He laughed into his glass. We don't deconflict weather. We asked why he leaked it. He said his sister teaches high school science, and he's tired of telling her the world is open when it isn't. Then a Scott-based junior handed us the kind of evidence that feels like cheating because it's so small. An SD card stamped honeycomb. Inside, magnetometer traces with a sawtooth riding Earth's field. A coil pulse that only exists when the late harmonic arrives. And one audio file that makes your teeth tighten. Ladder, breath, 5 seconds of blank that isn't, and a single click like a knuckle on a table in a dark room. She looked sick when we played it. They told us it was ice noise, she said. Does ice answer questions? Another micro cut. A helicopter crew chief texted a friend that an off-limits box had appeared over a flat stretch he'd landed on last season. Reason, wildlife disturbance. In August. Penguins, he wrote. Out here. He wasn't being clever. He was checking if he was crazy. The friend sent a shrug emoji and told him to file his fuel receipts on time. Here's the part that tightened our chests. Com said the buffers weren't just local. They were mirrored to a courier flight. Aluminum cases with tamper seals, manifests that said radios, carried by a crew that didn't check in on the public net. Their badges scanned green at doors even station managers couldn't open. He helped load one case. It vibrated faintly under his palm, slow and patient as a sleeping animal. He told himself it was a fan. He didn't ask for money. He asked a question. How long do you wait before a blackout becomes policy instead of caution? We didn't have an answer. He sent one more photo, a whiteboard from a closed room brief. For bullets, metric coupling, tidal modulation, harmonic entrainment, behavioral safety. Underline under safety. Someone had written in smaller hand, don't ping during listening. The doctor wrote back too. You want a human fact? He called home between mugs. Said he'd be late. Didn't say why. The hum matched his breath while he spoke. She paused, then added a line that belongs in any report they'll try to clean. Bones don't hallucinate tide. The geopolitical stakes. Who controls the Antarctic Gate? The blackout looked technical. It wasn't. It was a test of who gets to own a standard when the standard hums back. Start with incentives. The United States runs the biggest logistics spine on Ross, C-17S, icebreakers on call, McMurdo as hub. Control of lifts and links is control of time. If the gate rewards coherence, the first mover is the program that can assemble clocks, coils, and discipline crews in days, not months. That's the US edge. China reads the same map. Since the 198s, they've built a southward ladder, Great Wall Station, Zhongshan on the Ingrid Christensen coast, Kunlun high on Dome, then a new airfield network that knits into international flights without asking permission for curiosity. Their doctrine is patient presence, show up, stay, outlast. If admission depends on long, quiet listening, the advantage swings to the nation that can park sensors for years and pretend they're weather. Russia brings different leverage. They inherit deep geophysics, Vostok drilling, and an intelligence culture comfortable with silence. Sanctions don't travel well to the end of the earth, barter does. A working gravimeter in exchange for a seat in the tent. If the gate's output is order, not oil, Moscow will trade patience for proximity and publish just enough to keep a hand on the steering wheel of consensus. The European Union plays rules. BS, AWI, IPv, PNRA, strong programs, strong optics, a moral vocabulary built on open data. Their strategy is to own the language of governance. Write the frameworks, chair the working groups, make any breakthrough pass through Brussels before it reaches a patent office. If the interface yields protocols instead of parts, Europe will try to codify the protocol as a standard, ISO for a door. Meanwhile, the Antarctic Treaty sits like a glass shield that lets hands through. Peaceful use, free exchange, inspections on paper. In practice, logistics permitting becomes veto by weather, and support of science becomes uniformed crews flying classified boxes while everyone nods at penguins. No one needs to break the treaty. They just need to write safety on the crate and let a storm close the window. Here's the ugly calculus. If a boundary operator can stiffen metric locally and shave entropy into usable order, any nation that couples cleanly first doesn't just brag at conferences. It can move precision where others can't. Timing is power, satellites, finance, weapons guidance, secure comms. A 3% gain at the edge of physics becomes a 5-year lead in everything that counts. You don't announce that. You harvest it. Personal stakes cut sharper than flags. A field team lead with 2 kids at home is asked to sign a cross-program NDA that folds her work under a defense statute. A New Zealand grad's career can be made or broken by whether she calls a ladder ice noise. A pilot who ignores an off-limits box loses flight pay. The gate's first victims aren't rival states. They're honest people being nudged into quiet. So who controls the Antarctic Gate? Right now, no one, and that's the danger. A vacuum invites unilateralism wrapped in cooperation. The US can convene and cordon. China can camp and listen. Russia can barter silence. Europe can write policy that blesses what's already happening. Without an explicit gate clause. A regime that treats metric operators like nuclear materials crossed with cultural heritage. Control defaults to whoever solves admission first and builds narrative later. We can hear the counterargument, secrecy until safety. But safety decays when legitimacy does. A door that judges coherence should not become a prize for the few who can afford long winters and quiet lawyers. If the hum is a standard any human nervous system can learn, then gatekeeping it with export controls alone guarantees black budgets, brittle trust, and an arms race in rhythm. The choice lands in our laps as citizens, not just spectators. Demand audits of polar smoothing that silences anomalies. Demand treaty language that defines boundary operators and forces multilateral stewardship. Fund open, verifiable attempts at protocol that publish failures as much as gains. Because if we don't, the answer to who controls the Antarctic Gate will be simple. Whoever tells the best lie while the carrier counts to 11. The proof, analyzing the evidence that history is a lie. Lay out the receipts, not the rumors. Start with what instruments, humans, and policy all agree on. We have a boundary under the Ross ice shelf that enforces invariance, ratio, rhythm, coherence, while modulating local metric. That's not a vibe, that's measured. Clocks drift in periodic sawtooth near the interface and snap back on the late harmonic. Pendulums lose phase predictably. A gravimeter ticks with spring tides. A coil registers gain only when fed prime-spaced pulses. A fiber camera's timestamps reorder deterministically at the upstep and normalize when the carrier flattens. These are not anecdotes. They are repeatable behaviors tied to a beat that counts 11 seconds like it owns the room. Now pair physics with physiology. A winter-over medic recorded heart rate variability shifts in personnel working near the flagged sector, drifting toward the carrier and a nested 73-second envelope. Sleep improved, startle eased. The diver's own report, bone-conducted tones synchronized to tide, was filed, then erased from the incident draft. Bones don't hallucinate tide. The body is an instrument here, and the interface tunes it. Stack energy next. No plume, no exhaust, yet cutlery ticks, and the hum's envelope rises on spring tides and mild auroral substorms. The model that fits is boundary value control, order harvested from strain, and hiss by constraints set from outside. We pushed Fibonacci timing, and saw a 3% widening in pushback. That held with input and relaxed with hysteresis. That's gain with memory, in a system that cleans our spectrum before handing it back. A dumb slab doesn't discipline visitors. Add geometry. Space near the boundary refuses to share a perimeter with chaos. Geodesics shorten under flex, path-dependent perimeters disagree, and sonar returns a rectangle whose edges act like rails in curved space. The ice billows around a post that isn't anchored to ice. The diver's tether arcs toward the plane as if gravity has a preference. This is not cartoon anti-gravity. It's local metric stiffness you can feel in your wrist. Now the human chain, the part conspiracies get loud about and bureaucracies pretend doesn't exist. Com's photo of Quiet Gate on a black island console. A memo titled Temporary Deconfliction. Ross Sector, written without a project code. Aluminum cases vibrating faintly under a crew's palms. A whiteboard with metric coupling, tidal modulation, harmonic entrainment, behavioral safety, and a handwritten don't ping during listening. These aren't smoking guns. They're fingerprints on the safe. Bring in maps without handing victory to fantasies. The Pyrie Reese fragment from 1513 is not proof of ice-free Antarctica. Scholars overwhelmingly read the southern sweep as distorted Patagonia or Terra Australis, early modern cartographic habit, not prescience. Yet, in two stretches, its curve resonates with South Atlantic shelf edges more than chance prefers. Interpretation remains contested. Consensus lands with distortion. The point isn't to crown a fringe. It's to note that navigational memory sometimes preserves edges in ways projection math misreads, and an interface that edits local geometry would only worsen that mismatch. Contrast myths with measurements. Vril stays fiction. Base 211 remains unsupported. But the gate under Ross behaves in the way the oldest stories gesture toward. Admission by order, not force. Gates that judge state, not pedigree. Sumerian Mia's portable rule sets. Egyptian gates passed by correct names that are really states of alignment. Those read today like cultural wrappers for invariance our instruments verify. We don't need to pretend papyri, our manuals, to admit the rhyme. Finally, policy mechanics. The Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959, in force since 1961, guarantees peaceful use and free exchange while allowing military support for science. In practice, that's a velvet glove for a clenched procedure. Polar_smooth demons that replace raw frames every 11 seconds. Environmental integrity guidelines that mask specular glints. Embargoes that never lift. Inspection rights that weather cancels. If nothing lived under the shelf, you wouldn't need code that erases cadence. So what's the proof that history is a lie? Not that an empire under ice vanished. That our ladder for advanced skipped disciplines that gates reward breadth, ensemble timing, coherent architectures, then called what remains superstition. The evidence converges. Physics that answers rhythm, bodies that learn it, procedures that hide it, maps that echo it, and a hum that counts, patient as tide, asking if we remember how to keep time. The future implications, a new era of technology and truth. If energy at the gate is order, not what's, then the first power plants won't look like dams or reactors. They'll look like orchestrations, arrays of oscillators, coils, and timing systems that couple to tidal strain and geomagnetic hiss, then hand back clean, programmable stiffness in the local metric. Translate that to daily life, and you get machines that don't push harder, they align better. Buildings that damp earthquakes by sinking to ground modes. Aircraft that ride corridors of reduced turbulence created by coherent boundary conditioning. Computation that stabilizes clocks against vacuum jitter and drifts less than satellites do now. The leverage comes from timing, not torque. The tech tree flips. Instead of more thrust, more heat. The path climbs through coherence engineering. We'll need metrology first, public, reproducible ways to measure gate-like effects far from Ross. That means coastal pilot projects where tides are strong. Ring clock farms on piers, coil stacks and seawalls, VLF observatories that publish raw buffers in real time. Cryptographically signed so no one can polar_smooth them after the fact. If the signal is general, not the Ross device alone, we'll see small, lawful echoes. Phase cleaning during spring tides, hysteresis when fed prime ratios, and the same 11-second bias riding local modes. If we don't see those echoes, we'll learn the Ross gate is singular and guard our caution accordingly. Medicine won't wait on committees. The winter over medics HRV data already hints at the frontier. Therapeutics that restore coherence instead of forcing symptoms down. Imagine ICUs that entrain patients to a gentle carrier proven to improve sleep, blunt startle, and stabilize respiration without drugs. Imagine PTSD therapy that uses slow, nested envelopes to reteach the nervous system a safe baseline. No mysticism, just phase training. The risk, of course, is abuse. Cadence can heal, cadence can coerce. A regime that can tuck crowds into a compliant rhythm will try. That's why we need open protocols baked into civic law before someone ships a proprietary comm cloud to stadiums and parliaments. Security goes weird fast. Coherence becomes a weapon and a shield. A disciplined team with portable oscillators could harden a safe room's local time base, making eavesdropping by clock-dependent devices unreliable. A drone swarm that shares a carrier might hold formation in buffeting wind better than anything today. The darker mirror is denial. Incoherence bombs, noisy carriers that jam admission tests and keep others from coupling. We already have EM interference rules. We'll need metric hygiene rules. Don't puke noise into shared carriers. Don't feed gates sloppy inputs during listening. Don't privatize standards that living bodies also use. Law and ethics have to grow up in a hurry. The Antarctic Treaty was written for rocks and rifles, not boundary operators. We need a gate stewardship compact that treats interfaces as both hazardous materials and cultural heritage. Hazardous, because they can alter environments and bodies at distance. Heritage, because admission depends on disciplines communities have kept alive for millennia. That compact should hard ban unilateral exploitation, mandate open diagnostics, and require that any protocol capable of widening pushback be published, audited, and co-governed by a panel that includes physicists, physicians, navigators, and custodians of timing traditions, drummers, chanters, rowers, whose knowledge the device recognizes. Education changes shape. We've trained children to memorize facts and sprint deadlines. The gate rewards breath, ensemble, and attention held without strain. That's not soft. That's a national capability. Put coherence into curricula early. Choir not as enrichment, but as infrastructure. Rowing and dance as timing labs. Coding that treats clocks as living constraints, not afterthoughts. If a future crossing requires human-machine choirs, the countries that rehearse now will walk first. And if this sounds esoteric, remember the stakes we've already met. A diver whose bones learned the tide. A medic who watched startled reflexes soften on schedule. The body is ready. Institutions aren't. Truth itself becomes an engineering problem. The cover-up we watched didn't rely on lies. It relied on mismatched clocks and buffers you can't inspect. Immunize the public sphere with signed timing. Hash-chain sensor logs. Public beacons that broadcast phase with legal force. Citizen hardware grants so amateurs can cross-check polar data at home. Truth that depends on rhythm is fragile. Truth with receipts survives polar_smooth demons and cheerful memos. And then there's the crossing. Don't picture a hero striding into light. Picture a team. Cardiologist monitoring HRV and headset. Conductor calling tempo. Oceanographer reading tide. Physicist writing the scope. and one person at the line breathing 11 clean seconds into a field that refuses chaos. If the gate invests from the far side only when we're ready, then our job is to become the kind of species a careful machine will spend resources on. That means consent protocols, fail-safes, and a social license so strong that no one feels robbed when a door opens for the prepared before it opens for the loud. If we refuse this work, others won't. Coherence will be hoarded, then weaponized, then blamed when it bites back. If we accept it, we get a shot at a quieter kind of progress, cities that hum in tune with the ground beneath them, ships that follow carriers that don't drown them, people whose sleep isn't shredded by a feed that profits from incoherence. The hum isn't an anthem, it's a metronome. What we build next will show whether we learn to count. The door is open. That hum isn't background. It's a patient standard asking if we're ready to meet it halfway. We can treat it like a threat or accept it like a teacher that won't bend for noise. If you want the first attempt at an open protocol, human breath, public clocks, and a coil sequence you can test at home, watch the follow-up now. Subscribe so you don't miss the attentive windows we'll publish in real time, and share this with one person who still thinks cadence is just music. The door is listening.